Money Talk with Melanie features lively discussions of a wide range of global, domestic, and kitchen table financial topics. Guest interviews include entrepreneurs, CEOs, and politicos who are experts in their fields. Be sure to listen up. This is important because it's your money. Your money. Be sure to listen to Money Talk with Melanie. Money Talk with Melanie. Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time on 98.7 The Coast.
Good evening and welcome to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your host, Melanie Collette, and Merry Christmas to all of you. This evening, I'm so happy to be with you this evening on Money Talk with Melanie, broadcasting live from beautiful Wildwood, New Jersey. I have two wonderful guests for you this evening. The first hour, we have Mike Fitzpatrick. He is the founder and CEO of NCX Group. And if you've listened to my podcast, he is very familiar to you. He's been on my show many a times. So we're going to talk cybersecurity with him. We of course are connected on LinkedIn, and because he posted a story, a horrifying cybersecurity story about a healthcare facility right out of New Jersey, I said, can you come on the show and talk about this? He said, of course. So he's going to be on the show tonight. And in the second hour, we have Tatiana Tsoir. I believe I'm pronouncing her name correctly. And she is an author, speaker, and a visionary accountant. And we're going to have a nice chat with her about starting your own business. She actually is nicknamed the Small Business Whisperer. So I think we're going to have an exciting conversation with her about starting your own business. We are close to closing out this miserable year of 2021, and 2022 will hopefully be the year of good beginnings. Maybe you'll start a business in 2022. So we'll talk to Tatiana Tsoir about that. But before we do, I thought that one of the things that I might do with you all is give you a little media recap. I don't know if you're interested in this or not. You'll tell me if you're interested in this or not. But before I talk to you all on Money Talk with Melanie on Thursdays, during the week, I do all kinds of different media hits. I'm all over the place on the radio and on TV. And I didn't know whether or not you'd be interested in hearing about what I'm doing in different media during the week. So I thought I'd give you a little Money Talk recap as to where I'm venturing out and the kinds of interesting things I'm talking about during the week. So one of the things that I do, I'm part of an organization called Project 21, and Project 21 is an offshoot of an organization called the National Center for Public Policy Research. Now, that's a conservative media outlet, and they send me all over the place on TV and radio to talk about different public policy issues, but really interesting stuff. So one of the things that I was able to do this week is talk to a guy called Charles Heller on a show called Liberty Watch. And what did I get to talk about? Now listen up. So believe it or not, the Supreme Court ruled a while ago that it was okay for universities to use race-based admissions. You would think that was not allowed, but guess what? It is. You would think that was settled already by things like the Constitution, that you are not allowed to use race-based admissions for colleges, but you are. You are actually allowed, colleges are actually allowed to use this as a decision-making tool. Now, there are race-neutral criteria that you can use. So some people have said that this is not fair. Some people have said that because of systematic racism, it is okay to use race-based criteria for admissions. However, the Constitution actually says otherwise. Now, I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts of my commentary on that. You'll have to follow me on social media, and I'll give you all my hashtags to find out what I said about that. But I was on a show called Liberty Watch with Charles Heller, and we had a nice little chat about that. I also was on a video blog called the Carolina Journal, where I discussed the same topic. Then, this was really fun. I was interviewed by a gentleman named Bob Kellogg with American Family News. Now, apparently, there is a professor. She sounds like a lovely woman. Her name is Kim McLarkin, and she is a professor at Emerson College. She's a creative writing professor. She was recently promoted, and one of her writings, she said that white women and black women can't have true friendships, that they do not exist. And Bob Kellogg wanted to know from me how I felt about those comments. Yes. So part of the reason why I'm sharing this with you guys is because I do a lot of media, and I thought you might find it interesting about the different things, because I have this show, and you guys probably are thinking, why did they ask her to come on the radio? Because I actually do a whole lot of different media and a whole lot of commentary in different places, and I post it on my social media. Now, again, I'm not going to tell you what I said to Bob Kellogg about this, but now I will tell you one thing I said, that she probably knows the wrong white women. Maybe she has the wrong white friends. That was one of the things that I did suggest about this professor. But that was one of her writings. It's impossible, and she just got a promotion. And I did also suggest that if you are a professor and you said something like you're pro-choice, that you're pro-life, and you're a professor, and you put that in writing, that you probably would get fired. And that I found it interesting that you could say that you couldn't be friends with a white person, and that was okay. I did mention that. Now, I said all that to say that if you want to hear or see my appearances on TV, or listen to my media appearances on the radio, I post all the audio and the TV appearances on any of my social media. Oh, by the way, forgot to mention, if you missed last week's show, I had Senator-elect Ed Durr on the show, and he talked about unseating the 30-year incumbent, Senator Steve Sweeney. And I also had Jared Dillian on the radio for the second hour. He discussed how we can make more money and the psychology of inflation. We all know inflation is a thing, but did you know that there's a psychology behind it? And Jared Dillian was very informative in filling us in on how there's a psychology behind inflation. So I posted the podcast version of that on my social media. So if you wanted to hear or see any of that, the best way to do that is to follow me on any of my social media. On Facebook, at Money Talk Mel. On Twitter, at Money Talk Mel. On LinkedIn, at Melanie Collette. That kind of thing. So I thought I'd fill you in on some of the places I am when I'm not on the radio, because I'm sure you miss me dearly and have to wait for me. You have to wait till Thursday to listen to me, and I know it makes you very sad. So I figured I'd fill you in on where I am up until Thursday, so that you could get your fix during the week. Just missing Melanie Collette to death. So anyway, in the news, is it the Omicron? Is that what they're calling it? Omicron variant. That the news, that the media is trying to make it just very scary, but it's really not that scary. Like, it sounds like it's just like a little cold. Like, I think only one person has died, and that person that died had a lot of comorbidities. So it's supposed to be really mild. Anyway, the United States is planning on handing out free COVID tests next month. They said they didn't see it coming. I don't know how you didn't see there were variants coming. It's going to cost billions of dollars. Britain, our friends over in Britain, have been doing massive testing for months. As a matter of fact, in Britain, you can just, I believe it's go on a website or call and get 7 tests at a time. And it has cost Britain billions of dollars. But it has really helped mitigate their cases of COVID. I think it's down like 30% in Britain. So I don't really understand how the Biden administration in particular hasn't really been on top of the testing component of shutting down COVID, which I believe is what we were promised when President Biden ran for election. We were promised he was going to shut down the virus. I'm pretty sure that's what he said he was going to do. And we're due to get, 500 million tests in January. That just doesn't seem to be good enough. But that's what he's doing. That's what he says he's going to do. Anyway, I think it's really not good enough. It's disappointing, and it's making me worry just a little bit. I'm just saying. Another thing that I ran into that I thought was kind of sad, I ran into an article that said 6 figures isn't enough to buy the American dream anymore. And I did think to myself, according to whom is 6 figures not good enough to buy the American dream anymore? But I ran into an article in Business Insider that said that sadly, and I guess maybe the theory was due to inflation. And I suppose if you are planning to support your kid until they're 26 years old and pay for college, like now, everything is very different. I'm old. I'll admit that. I'm in my 50s. So things are done quite differently now. Like, parents are expected to do a lot for their kids. Like, when I was growing up, when I turned 18, my parents were like, goodbye and good luck. And I don't, I have no problem with that. It was fine. They raised me and they did their thing. They were like, go to college, work hard, and you'll be successful. And I don't think that was bad advice, but this article that I was reading in Business Insider said that a $100,000 salary is now middle class, and that's no longer enough to buy the symbols of the American dream. A house, an education, and kids have all become way more expensive, exceeding income increases. High earners are embracing their own version of the good life, creating a new American dream. I'm like, But here's the other thing. I was talking to one of my friends the other day, and one of the things I noticed is that kids don't work anymore. Like, I'm an educator, and I noticed many of my teenage students don't work. Like, I've been working since I was 12. I had a babysitting job when I was 12. And then I started working at McDonald's when I was like 16. And I think I had that job and my babysitting job. And then I worked 2 jobs when I was in college. Like, kids don't work. I can't envision a life where I just went to school and didn't work. But kids don't work. And I have to think that me working as a teenager offset some of my parents' expenses. Right? So I'm thinking to myself, like, now you have cell phones. Like, how do parents afford it? Cell phones are really expensive. I can't imagine having to purchasing a cell phone for myself is pretty expensive, right? I'm in the market for a new MacBook. I can't imagine having to provide that for 2 or 3 kids right now and myself. That's pretty expensive. I can't imagine. I guess it's hard to afford that. You'd have to make a lot of money. 6 figures is not going to cover that. If the kid's involved in sports, you got to buy sports equipment, top of the line sneakers. Like, that's a lot. So 6 figures probably isn't going to do it. There are fewer homes for $100K. Like, where are you going to find a house for $100,000? Where are you going to find that? Nowhere. And inflation is actually funny. I teach financial literacy, and I was doing a lesson on inflation. And in the lesson, there's an inflation calculator. And of course, it shows how dramatically things change and how your money loses buying power. And of course, very quickly, one of my very smart students caught on and said, do you get paid more money as your money loses power? And I, of course, busted out laughing hysterically. And he was like, why are you laughing? And I said, well, that therein lies the problem, dear. No, you do not. And I relayed the story to him about how inflation right now is at about 6.8%. And the increase in income right now is at about 4%. So we're operating at about a 2% loss right now. And that's the issue that we're having. I told him that he should be listening to the news right now and listening about the inflation rate and the rate of wage increase and how that currently is a problem, and that's why. Now, a bit of good news, maybe, is that the White House did agree to freeze federal student loan payments again because of the pandemic until May 1st. They've done this over and over and over again. And I don't know. Joe Biden may agree to actually do away with the student loans because, he lost Build Back Better, although he keeps claiming that they're going to be able to do Build Back Better after the start of the year. But if he's not able to do that, he's going to need some kind of win because the midterms are coming up. They're going to need a W, or else they're going to get slaughtered. Well, I think they're going to get killed anyway, but, who knows? Maybe they won't. But they're going to have to put something in the W column. So, and the far left is really upset about them not getting to do Build Back Better. So they're upset about no loan forgiveness right now, no Build Back Better. He's going to have to feed them some red meat. So, I don't know. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. Up next, we are going to have Mike Fitzpatrick, cybersecurity expert. Very excited to have him back on the phone. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Money Talk with Melanie features entrepreneurs, CEOs, and politicos who are experts in their fields. Money Talk with Melanie. Money Talk with Melanie on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to Money Talk with Melanie. I almost forgot that I was supposed to start talking. So there's... Even though my producer totally said to me about a second ago, we're going to start talking in a minute, and gave me a thumbs up, which means I'm supposed to start talking, and I still did not start talking when I was supposed to start talking. Anyway, I'm about to introduce my guest, Mr. Mike Fitzpatrick. I'm so excited that I'm about to have him on the phone. He is the founder and CEO of NCX Group. He is a successful information risk. Let me start over. NCX Group is a successful risk management firm, to say the least. It's been in existence for 35 years. Uh-oh. No, that's okay. Okay, you can still hear me? Okay. The sound seems like it changed. Anyway, Fitzpatrick leads a team of highly skilled engineers and professional consultants who are dedicated to providing security assessments and innovative strategies that protect critical data and ensure a business environment remains operational. Among its clientele are companies from Fortune 2000 to Fortune 50 in the fields of finance, healthcare, energy, and education. No one knows more about cybersecurity and protecting your business than Mike Fitzpatrick. And without further ado, Mike Fitzpatrick.
Hi, Melanie. How are you?
Hi. How are you?
Man, I am so much better that I'm talking to you now.
Man, I miss you. By the way, people, Mike Fitzpatrick and I are good friends, and he's been on my show like 1,000 times. He's been on the...
It's nice to christen the new show.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you back on.
Well, me too. It's been too long, and there are a lot of things going on from a cybersecurity standpoint, and it's definitely never a dull moment.
It really isn't. I'm always on. I'm on LinkedIn way too often. First of all, before we even get into that, is there anything? I just did the quick and dirty bio about your company, NCX Group. Is there anything that I didn't mention in your bio that you'd like the audience to know?
Well, instead of 35 years, it's really 20 years that NCX Group has been around. This next year, we move into our 20th year, believe it or not.
Wow, congratulations.
It's been interesting to start when no one gave cybersecurity really any credibility or thought to where we are now. In every business, every organization, it's the lifeblood of everything we do day in, day out. And the vulnerabilities in supply chain and everything else that's happened over the last 24 months has been pressed it to its breaking point. So it's going to be an interesting 2022. See what happens next.
It really will be an interesting 2022. So I'm cruising along on LinkedIn the other day. And, I always look at your posts and see what you're posting about. You're always posting some pretty interesting stuff about what's going on in Cyberland. And I see this post that a New Jersey provider settles not one, but two healthcare data breaches, two data breach investigations for $425,000. So, of course, me being from New Jersey, I click on it and go, what in the heck is this? Like, what is going on here? Because that's, first of all, a healthcare data breach is a major problem, and $425,000 doesn't seem like a lot for something like that.
Well, again, those are the settlements with the state organizations. That's not the actual cost of the breach. Probably the cost of the breach, and it was 105,000 identities that were exposed through a phishing attack. Well, 91% of all breaches now start with a phishing attack. Somebody clicking on an email that they shouldn't have clicked on, or a link that they shouldn't have clicked on, something that looked legit but wasn't. And 105,000 identities were exposed: name, driver's license, credit card, those kinds of things. Here in California, where I am, we are now dealing with profiles in privacy. We're now dealing with not only those key indicators, but we're also dealing with all of the information that might be collected about an individual related to cookies, where they go on your website, social media interactions. Those kinds of things are also now part of data privacy in California and several other states, for that matter. So, again, they had a breach of 105,000. That's probably a magnitude of loss of about $3 million between the discovery costs, the forensics investigation, which is part of the discovery, the notification costs, and then damage to reputation and downtime. is also part of that. What's not figured in that is the cost of credit reporting if they are, as I recall from the article, the state required credit reporting for 2 years. So that is not calculated in those costs. The fines, the $425,000 was legal fees and of $71,000 and $325,000, I guess it was, or $350,000 for the actual fines that the state imposed. Worked out to about $4.04 per user that was exposed is what the fine was. Personally, I wish companies and I wish state agencies would really produce a fine. I mean, something to be proud of.
Right. That's what I'm sitting here thinking, because as soon as you said the number of people who were affected, I did some quick math in my head, and I'm like, that doesn't sound like a lot per person.
Oh, I mean, it's a slap on the wrist.
Right.
I mean, it really is. It really is. I'm waiting for the $1 trillion fine. Right,
like that.
Companies and the sheer number of breaches and identities, I'm waiting for the $1 trillion fine.
Yeah, because that's not a whole lot, particularly for what it is, a healthcare data breach. And then when you say it's because of phishing, now what does that usually? Because, and for those of you, I mean, you briefly touched on it, and I go, teaching financial literacy. I go over this in my class to try to talk to kids about with their banking information and how to identify like fraudulent emails and things like that. And phishing is one of the things that I cover. So this means that an employee probably, right, somebody at that establishment probably clicked on, didn't know how to identify a phishing email.
And I have to say, I mean, quite frankly, Melanie, they're getting very good.
True.
It looks as though they're using Grammarly to improve the grammar and take out some of the spelling errors and context. And some of them might actually be using some of the artificial intelligence writing tools that are out there to help craft better email. But somebody probably unintended clicked on a link that exposed the company. In the past, when we do phishing simulations with clients, the usual acceptance rate or click-through rate is about 35%.
Wow.
So within 12 hours, we will have, if it's 500 emails that are sent out, we will probably have about 140 different ways in, either through password and credential or an actual rootkit on being able to have God access on their servers within 12 hours. It's really very, very easy.
But it's a pretty basic rule that companies are not going to reach out to you via email and ask for personal secure information. That's just...
Well, but that's not the kind of emails that they're getting. They might be. I mean, and typically what we do with the spear phishing attack, it's typically something that is not a Netflix or your Visa or those kinds of things in your work email, or at least shouldn't be. It really comes down to, and I'll give you for instance, one of our clients, we went through and conducting a phishing exercise. So we used the name of the CIO. We basically sent out an email to 250 of the employees and said, and it's from Bob. Hi Bob. This is Mike. I wanted to let you know that we had a breach last night. If you would change your username and password as soon as you possibly can, thanks. Very internal, benign email. And what we do is we spoof the domain name. We make it look like it's their legitimate domain. And again, 35% every time.
Okay. All right. So how should the employee know the difference between that and a legitimate email?
Well, the employee, cybersecurity awareness training, especially using micro-learning, techniques, something 3 to 5 minutes of time for the employees, is a great way to educate the workforce on what types of attacks are occurring, how they're utilizing it. One of the tools that we have and we offer from a training standpoint is actually animated.
Okay. Mike, you know what? I am so sorry to cut you off because I asked the question and we're up against the break. I'm sorry. That's totally.
I got it. We got real breaks now.
Yep, exactly. That's completely my bad. But we'll have you finish explaining that on the other side of the break. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. We have Mike Fitzpatrick, cybersecurity expert, and we will be back on the other side of the break.
This is important because it's your money. Your money. Money Talk with Melanie. Money Talk with Melanie on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back, everyone. We are on with Mike Fitzpatrick. He's the founder and CEO of NCX Group. He is a cybersecurity expert, and we were talking to him about security breaches and how they happen. Specifically, we were talking about phishing and how you can accidentally click on an email that someone sends to you to try to get you to give them information, which is what phishing is. And so he was talking about how his company runs exercises to basically get people to click on their emails. To take the bait. And so I was asking him before the break, how can employees identify fake emails from real emails?
Well, and as we started to say before the break, what it comes down to is really educating your employees. And it is from a front line of defense standpoint for every size business, whether it's 10 employees or it's 5,000 employees. It really is some of the best money that a business can spend in educating your employees on what the threats are, what they typically try to manipulate, how they attempt to manipulate. It not only makes them better protectors for the company and the organization, but it also makes them better consumers in their own lives. And I think it for the cost of a couple of bucks per month per user, it's some of the best money that can actually be spent in the area of cyber education. It's a fantastic way to get truth across, and as I started to say, the tool that we use is actually animated, and the scripts are written using real-world breaches, real-world attacks, but they're put into an entertaining form by actual Hollywood writers and producers from NCIS, Las Vegas, New Orleans, those kinds of shows. And they make them entertaining and engaging. And then you follow it up with 4 or 5 questions, and you can actually track how well your team is doing and understanding the information that they're getting.
Okay. That makes sense. Now, what's kind of funny, now, is that for a private business, or is that, I mean, can public entities engage in something like that? Like, I've worked in public. I've worked for a public entity for about 15 years now. I've literally never had any kind of cybersecurity training ever.
It's interesting. We do a lot of work in higher education from a cybersecurity standpoint.
Yes.
And one of the things that they have embraced and we have pushed greatly through the years has been this micro-learning for staff and faculty within the community college districts across the country that we work with. So it's something that every organization, both public and private, should be embracing. I mean, it's one of those foundational steps. I mean, cybersecurity, first rule is it's not an IT issue. IT doesn't set direction and guidance and where the company is going. That comes from above. and business leaders of all levels need to embrace this, especially small and mid-sized business. We know that 55% of all small and mid-sized businesses were breached in 2020, had some type of security incident, whether it's ransomware, whatever it might have been. We also know that they are out of business within 66% of them are out of business within 6 months. The likelihood of surviving a cybersecurity event is only 33%.
Wow.
So you have to take foundational steps. And recently I did a presentation for a couple of small business groups here in California. First thing is the education. Second thing is making sure that you do some type of basic assessment each year. Third, the use of password managers, because of complex passwords today, are an absolute must. Myself, I'm up 130 different passwords now. The remembering of that is unbelievably complex. So
wait, Mike. Did you
yeah.
did you just say you're up to 130 passwords?
Yeah, I'm up to 130 different passwords.
What do you mean?
That's
What do you mean?
I have software tools. I have a business run, things like that, so you got to have passwords to everything, right?
Yeah. So you mean you don't have the same password for like all your apps? Like I counted my apps on my phone one time, and I think I had 92. And I'm almost positive that I have the same password for all 92 of my apps. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's not a good strategy, man.
Well, I teach my kids that that's not a good strategy, of course. And then I don't, and then of course I have the same password for all my apps. I tell my students that they shouldn't do that, though.
Well, yeah, definitely a password manager should be under the Christmas tree for you.
For sure. So you use a password manager. That's the trick. That's what you do.
Yeah, we use it across the business.
Okay.
And so I've even pushed it on my wife and my son as well.
Oh my goodness.
You need to utilize the password generation tool within it to come up with something that is a hardened password that is going to make it difficult.
Whenever I see that I say absolutely not.
Well,
because it comes up and I'm like, oh, absolutely no. Because I'm not going to remember that.
Well, but here's the best part is the computer does remember that for you. I like something a little bit more secure than Safari.
Okay. Okay, I never even use Safari. That thing is awful.
So, the biggest thing is the bad guys are not really breaking the doors down anymore. They go out on the dark web and they find the leaked passwords and credentials out on the dark web. They just use your username and login.
Okay, so when you get an email that says that you're like an email from like Gmail, for example, that says your name and password may have been discovered on the dark web. Should you take that seriously?
Well, there's ways that you can find out. Matter of fact, the
I'm not saying that I may or may not have received that email.
Well, if you have, there's 92 different places you can go with it. So it really comes down to the password manager. There's two password managers that I like. One Password, and the other is Keeper. Keeper will actually go through and do a security assessment on your passwords and will notify you if one of your passwords has been found on the dark web.
Really?
So, yes. So then you can go through and immediately change it and move on through your day.
Now,
so
okay, but here's what I find curious. With all of us working, with so many people working remotely, many of us, you know what I'm about to say, that's why you're laughing. Many of us working with our own computers, you know, you're working on...
I know all too well.
Right. So you're working, like even right now, I'm in the studio. I have my Facebook page open. I can go to a different profile. Like I could open my work profile right now if I wanted to. And nothing would stop me from opening up my work stuff while attached to the Wi-Fi in the studio. Like, how is that secure? And there's you know what I'm saying? Like there's no protocol for that.
Well, what should be done is the use of what are called containers. And containers separate your personal life on your personal device from the business and the business life. And it doesn't allow for cross-pollination, if you will.
Right.
So it's a great way for companies to keep their data secure, and God forbid they have to let an employee go. Like, what was it? There's some CEO that let 900 employees go.
At better.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was better.com,
I mean,
which is really like the most ironic business name for someone who let their employees go via Zoom. But
so, you know, hopefully he had everything on containers and was able to, as he was removing 900 employees,
sure,
wipe the business data from their computers. So, I mean, it's just a really good strategy. But as I started to say, I mean, cybersecurity is really a business process. It involves technical, but it also involves HR. It also involves legal. It involves strategy for what your cultural DNA is going to be from a cybersecurity perspective. What are the risks that you're willing to accept, and what are the ones that you absolutely are not willing to accept?
Right.
And those are the important parts where leadership within the organization has to be part of it. Has to lead that discussion.
So interestingly, the data from my public job is not protected. The data from my financial services job is encrypted.
Doesn't surprise me.
You know what I mean?
Well, but I mean, there's this belief in education that everybody should have freedom of access to everything.
But you absolutely cannot. So there's laws protecting it, but there's no cybersecurity protecting it.
Well, but don't even get me started on FERPA, because quite frankly, the whole remote classroom thing through Zoom is a complete violation of FERPA.
I try to explain, I've explained this to people over and over and over again who say that there should be cameras in the classroom. And I'm like, you cannot have, you're not going to get cameras in the classroom because of FERPA. You're not even allowed, even with remote learning, you cannot show the inside of your classroom. You can only show the presentation side. And people, nobody will listen to me. But it's another conversation.
Zoom has access, but Zoom has access to that classroom.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Which does make it BS. But that's, yeah, you're right.
You know, it's really selective in what laws and what regulation we're following these days.
It's all one lawsuit away.
Whether it's FERPA in the classroom or HIPAA violations. I'm not sure what we're trying to stay in compliance with these days. For guys like me, it's really hard.
You got to pick your violation, Mike. You got to pick.
I've got a list. It's kind of like Santa in the list.
Pick the violation of the day. But I just find it interesting, and I'm shocked that no public entity, particularly in education, hasn't been attacked. There's so much information there. And so many people have access to so much stuff.
Well, there's a lot of school districts around the country that have been hit. There's a lot of community colleges that have been hit. Maybe your district is just lucky But at some point that luck's going to run out. The big thing this week or the last 2 weeks that we're all dealing with is something called Log4j.
What is that? I saw that I think the White House or the feds sent out a warning about making sure that the vulnerabilities were protected. Can you quick tell us about that, because we have to wrap up the hour? I'm sorry.
Okay, so Log4j, real quick, is Log4j really stands for Log for Java. So anything written in JavaScript or Java anything related to Apache servers, 32 different technology companies. This is a massive supply chain vulnerability that is completely open to an attack. This is COVID for computer systems.
And it was nowhere in the news. When I was reading about that, I was like, wow, like not one news report about that.
Well, CNN reported on it, but oh my God, it must have been a fifth grader that wrote the report. It was horrible.
Well, JavaScript's horrible, but that's like a whole other show.
This is a massive problem. All the folks in IT that I know have been working relentlessly for the last 2 weeks since December 9th when this news broke to go through patch systems, scan systems, test systems, because it is pervasive. It even gets into Java logins.
Good grief.
So it actually allows for remote code execution against that vulnerability. So this is big for crypto mining and cryptojacking malware installed on your computer. So there's a lot of information that is coming out on it. We compiled a list last week and published it on our website, ncxgroup.com. So if you go to the blog, we actually have an executive checklist, if you will, of the areas that you need to review and information on where to get the patches. The Apache servers, which run web services and web sites for the most part,
okay.
They've done 2 updates in the last week to try to close this gap.
Okay, thank you so much for that. You're gonna have to come back and do more. You're the best, Mike. Thank you so much, Mike Fitzpatrick.
Thanks, Melanie.
NCX Group, ladies and gentlemen. Great job as usual. Thank you so much,
Merry
Mike.
Christmas.
You too, honey. Have a good one. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. We'll be back.
Money Talk with Melanie features lively discussions of a wide range of global, domestic, and kitchen table financial topics. Guest interviews include entrepreneurs, CEOs, and politicos who are experts in their fields. Be sure to listen up. This is important because it's your money. Your money. Be sure to listen to Money Talk with Melanie. Money Talk with Melanie. Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time on 98.7 The Coast.
I hope you guys enjoyed Mike Fitzpatrick from NCX Group. You really should follow him on Twitter. He posts a lot of really good stuff. Like if you're a business owner, or really even anybody who's concerned about cybersecurity, he posts just some really good stuff. I'm always looking at his stuff if you just want to keep up with cybersecurity. He really just tells you cybersecurity done right. He's always telling me the right thing to do. I don't always listen like I'm supposed to. Like he's been telling me, he's been giving me really good advice for years, and I just know one day my like computer's just going to implode, and he's going to be like, "I told you so." Told you, Melanie, I told you. But he's just a really smart guy. So you should be following him on Twitter, or try to connect with him on LinkedIn. I believe on Twitter he is at NCX Group. But yeah, you should be following him, and I think he has a Facebook page, NCX Group. But you should be following him, and if you have a business, you should definitely be reaching out to him on his website and see if you can hook up with him and get his business to protect you, because the man knows what he's talking about, and it costs a lot. Once your business has been breached, it's a wrap. I mean, your reputation, the cost of fixing that breach, it's a whole mess. And if you look at the statistics, he and I have been talking about this for years. 60% of businesses who get cyber attacked do not survive. Like it's over. People get amazingly mad when their personal information get revealed to criminals. It's amazing how pissed off people get when that happens. So just saying. And so, he knows all the protocols and things like that you need to do to protect your business. One of the things that I found to be amazing that we talked about on one of my shows was something you never think about is physical vulnerabilities, which a lot of people don't think about. Particularly with bigger companies, physical vulnerabilities, like literally a cleaning person or something coming in with a thumb drive and stealing intellectual property, like that espionage type stuff. Like that still goes on in like 2021. People are still doing that. Literally, that's still happening. And, those are the kinds of vulnerabilities his company is able to reveal and protect you from. It's some very serious business out here. It's no joke. Anyway, the next hour, just something to help you sleep at night. Just kidding. Sweet dreams. Just kidding. So I have a couple of end of the year financial thoughts for you before we bring on my second hour guest, who is Tatiana Tsoir, who is the Small Business Whisperer. I'm very excited about having her on the show this evening. I think she's going to bring some good energy and talk to us about being an entrepreneur. And not being nervous about it, being bold, and jumping off 2022 with being bold and smart and being our own boss. And let's face it, you need a side hustle these days. You just really do. Can't rely on this one stream of income. You can't rely on one stream of anything, for real. Like you diversify. Just saying, like that applies to a lot of stuff. I'm just saying, it applies to a lot of things. So I ran across two end of the year things that I thought would be good for you all to know about. If you're not a maniac like me and don't follow these trends, one thing that I saved that I thought you all would be interested in I saw an article that said, "This is all I do is troll for information and send myself articles. Do you get an end of the year bonus? If you work for a private entity, you probably do. I used to work for a wealthy entrepreneur, and I used to get an end of the year bonus every year. It was wonderful. But when you work for a public entity, that tends not to happen. So, yeah, that hasn't happened for me in a long time. But I ran into an article that gave me 4, and so I thought I'd pass it on to you, 4 strategic things to do with that end of the year bonus. And I thought I'd pass them on to you. Don't spend it, first of all. That's when I was introduced to Vanguard Star Fund, my very first bonus I ever received. And I thought that was wonderful. That was when I was introduced to investing. And of course, the very first tip is to put it aside for a rainy day. You should always have an emergency fund. It's a very good idea to have an emergency fund. Contribute to your retirement plan. All of these sound boring, but it's a good idea. pay off any debt. And not in that order. Really, pay off debt first. Okay, emergency fund first, pay off debt second, emergency fund third. These all sound very boring, but these are all financial tips 101. And last, if all that stuff is done, you can use some of it to reward yourself. I know, finances is boring, but that's the way it goes. Those are the end of the year bonus tips. Now, if you work for a public entity, you probably don't get any bonuses. That's just, you work for the public and you get paid with tax dollars. There's no end of the year bonus. That's just how it is. Because it's considered a public service, and we do it happily. Those of us who work for the public, we do. We don't do it for the money. We do it for the love of the people. That's right. And the public. Merry Christmas. My producer's over here just cracking up. He's like, has she been drinking? I actually have not. I haven't had one glass of wine yet. Because it's show day. Now, typically, today's the first day of winter break. And as I've mentioned several times, I'm an educator. And I got off at like 12:30 today. Typically, by 12:31, I've had a martini. But it's a show day, so I did not. So actually, no, I've had nothing to drink today. But the show is over at 9. By 9:01, could be a different story. We'll see. Now, I have more tips for you. More end of the year tips. 22 ways to save. Now, I will not be going in depth on 22 ways to save money, but save and invest and be smarter with your money in 2022. I couldn't believe that I was preparing some things for next year, and I couldn't believe that I kept typing 2022. Ridiculous. But I will tell you where I got this information. There's an article, and actually, if you follow me on social media, I post a lot of this stuff on social media. If you follow me at Money Talk Mel on Twitter, or you follow me on Facebook, I post a lot of this stuff on my social media because I feel like it's beneficial. It's this CNBC. They have a newsletter, I guess, if you will, called Make It, and they post a lot of good, very practical information. Some of the stuff I think is lame, but but some of it's good. One of the things they said is picture your perfect. I've never been into this, but some people are. Picture your perfect year. Okay, I guess. Like, what do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish? Personally, I've always been a huge fan of TED Talks. It's not necessarily financial, but a friend of mine told me like 5 years ago that she thinks I should do a TED Talk. And I was looking at some TED Talks yesterday, and I think it might be my time. I think I might do a TED Talk. I think I might make that a goal. Doesn't really have anything to do with money, but a TED Talk might be in my future. I think it might be time. Maybe tweet me some ideas. What do you think I should do a TED Talk about? But it might be time. Most of TED Talks are really good, but I've seen some that I'm like, I think I might be able to do a better job. Just saying. I'm just saying. I'm like, I could do as well as that person did. Number 2, track your growth. This is important. That's a good, important financial tip. As a matter of fact, as lame as it sounds, track what you're doing with your money, for real. I can't tell you how many times I stopped really paying attention to what I was doing. And then when I went into my little mint.com app and looked to see what I was doing, and I was just really, I needed to get it together. Like, sister, pull it together. Get your life together and stop playing around. Invest in an index fund. You're gonna have to Google that. I'm not gonna give you a quick and dirty lesson on why that's necessary. But if you're new to investing, that's where you need to be. Number 4, yes, be careful with trading apps. If you're new to investing, just, be careful. Don't go crazy with the trading apps. Be careful. Learn as you go. Use play money. Don't go crazy. Okay? I like this one. See a financial therapist. Because a lot of how you spend your money has a lot to do with your head. A lot to do with how you think, believe it or not. Not only how you spend, but how you save has a lot to do with your head. And financial therapists apparently exist. And quite frankly, in my personal opinion, a lot of people could spend some time on the couch just in general. No matter how mentally healthy you think you are, you probably could spend some time on the couch. Just, once a year or so. Just have a chat with somebody. I'm just saying. Just have a chat. Have a talk. Just check in. Make sure you're doing okay. Monitor your accounts. I already mentioned that. Just check in with your accounts every now and then. Now, my bill paying account, I check in with that every day. Hi, how you doing? Everybody doing all right in there? You doing okay? My savings accounts, maybe once a week. But make sure you're monitoring your stuff. This is a lame one. Find some inspiration. Meh. I know people who do that, though. I have a couple of girlfriends that are really into the podcasts, and they listen to them every day, and they're really inspired. They even listen to me. Wow, okay. And they'll text me and be like, I was really inspired by your podcast, and what you said was really encouraging. And I'm like, I was? Well, thanks, girls. I wasn't even trying to be, but thank you. Yeah, but that's good if you can do that. Usually, for me, it's the Bible or something. But I don't have any, people that do that for me. But if you can find some inspiration out there, do it. Now, this is an important one, and I actually need to do better with this one. But again, depends on who you work for. Ask for what you're worth. In a public entity, you can't really do that. Doesn't matter. If you work for a public entity, you can't really negotiate your salary. That's kind of the bummer with working for a public entity. If you work for a private entity, you can negotiate your salary. You can walk in and say, this is what I want because this is what I'm worth. In a public entity, you're in a union or something like that, and it's negotiated on your behalf, and that's what you get paid. So that is what it is. But the market, the job market is pretty tight. Ask for what you're worth. Heck, try to keep up with inflation if you can. We're right now we're at a 2% deficit, generally speaking. Improve your credit score. Depends on who you listen to. Dave Ramsey says your credit score is not very important because you should be paying cash for everything. Depends on who you ask about your credit score, but maybe improving your credit score is a good idea. I know somebody who has an 800 credit score. Good for him. Just saying. Pretty good. Make a plan for your benefits. That is actually a really good idea. A lot of people don't do this. You should be strategic with your employer benefits, particularly as we start a new year. Check out everything. Know what's available. Use your flexible spending account. You should be strategic. It's a good idea. Do one task you've been putting off. Yeah, you should do that. Schedule a recurring life administration day. That's a good idea, too. Take care of your life stuff. Yeah, that's a good idea. Learn about crypto. That's a good idea. Figure out your retirement number. That's a good idea when you plan to retire. Contribute more to your Roth IRA. Another really good idea. Increase your savings rate. Another really good idea. Oh, now they're coming up with, they're cooking with gas now. Cut down your expenses. Take it easy. Prepare for student loan repayments to resume. Biden's in office. We're getting rid of those. No, I'm just kidding. Make your money count. Not with this high inflation. No way. Let's see what else we got. We got two more. Talk it out with your significant other. Make sure you talk about your money. And invest in yourself. That was the last one. That's very true. Actually, really good article. You should check it out on CNBC.com, but it's posted on all my social media. I just thought that was a really good article. And even if you pick up like 2 of those ideas, you'll probably be better off financially in 2022. So I thought it was a really good article. Next up, after this commercial break, we will have the one and only Tatiana Tsoir. And I'm probably going to find, her last name is spelled Tsoir. And we're probably going to find out after the break that I've been pronouncing her name incorrectly the whole show. But anyway, I think it's going to be some really good information. We'll be right back.
Money Talk with Melanie. Money Talk with Melanie. Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to the second hour of Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your host, Melanie Collette. And for the second hour, we have Tatiana Tsoir. She is a CPA, MBA, an author, speaker, visionary accountant, and over the last 16 years, she has worked with entrepreneurs and business owners to help them manage their money, numbers, and taxes and become the boss of their bottom line. Tatiana is now committed to sharing her expertise with a broader audience to empower those overwhelmed with running a business so they can make money doing what they love. She is known as the Small Business Whisperer, and she's also the author of the book, Dream Bold, Be Smart. Be your own boss and make money doing what you love. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Tatiana Tsoir. How are you?
I'm doing great, Melanie. How are you?
I am well. Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yes, you are.
Oh, my goodness. I was nervous about that all day. Even though you have it on your website, but I was like, is it Sawyer or Sawyer? Or Sawyer? Like, even though you had the phonetic spelling there, I was still like, I'm not sure if I'm doing it right. Okay, I'm glad. How are you, ma'am?
I'm doing great. How are you doing on this day before Christmas Eve?
I am wonderful. Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas to you, too.
So, you are known as the Small Business Whisperer.
Sure.
And is there anything in your bio that I did not mention that you'd like the audience to know about you?
No, actually, you've done a pretty great job. You've covered everything. My book title is Dream Bold, Start Smart. And that's about it. You've done a great job. Thanks so much for the introduction.
Okay, wonderful. So what made you want to write that book? You're obviously very qualified to write such a book. What made you, did you see a gap in the self-help area of business books that said we needed a book like yours?
You know, so I actually, it's a little bit of a story, but I'll make it fairly short for the listeners and for you. Essentially, I wanted to be a lawyer, actually, for many years. But then when I moved to the U.S., I had to pick a major, and because I was already working in accounting, in bookkeeping, I picked accounting because I thought, it will allow me to support myself. And so I went down the road up the road, rather, for me, of the road of accounting, tax, and I was fortunate enough to really, from the beginning, work with small businesses, see different industries and different leadership styles, and I've developed a really niche boutique practice. I've built my really very cool practice that I enjoy working in. And a few years ago, I went through a little bit of a transformation where I decided to create more balance in my life. And so that also involved working more closely with clients. And that also resulted in higher fees. When you work more with clients, you have to charge more to sustain a certain level of income. And so I stopped working with those who are just starting out in business, who just want to start a side hustle and see where it goes, or just want to keep running something on the side, because typically there's no budget for someone like me. And honestly, there's no need for someone like me at that stage. However, I also found myself when prospective clients would come in for a consultation, and I would look at their documents and records and books and everything and where they were at the time, I would find myself thinking, if only they started better, if only they knew these basics and these things, they could have skipped all this anxiety. They could have saved the money that they've wasted potentially, or all of those things. And so I decided that I can impact a number of businesses working with them as an accountant. However, I can also impact many more lives of people who want to start a business but aren't sure how to even start, where to even go, how to take it to the next level. And also, if you think about it, those businesses who are just starting out, some of them may not even start because of these hurdles, financial hurdles. Everybody knows you have to file taxes and pay taxes and so on and so forth. And so when you don't know how to do that and don't even know where to start, add to that the flood of information online, it's really hard to take the first step sometimes. And so I wanted to empower women. I wanted to empower creatives. I wanted to empower those dreamers who have a dream of being free, which is typically what entrepreneurship is associated with, and give them the power and the roadmap on how to make it happen without wasting time, money, and without getting into anxiety of it.
Right. So it's because entrepreneurship tends to be a lot of trial and error, a lot of failure, right? Right?
Yeah.
And a lot of mistakes. It may be some frustration. And so was part of the goal of your book to eliminate some of that?
Yes. So when I started out, I laughed because I think it's a bold dream, but I don't think it's impossible. But my dream is to give those who want to have their own business or a side hustle, give them a chance to do that and do it smart. Give them the power to do it without thinking, oh, what if I fail? What if I lose money or it doesn't happen? Give them confidence, at least when it comes to the most foundational element of a business, which is money, numbers, and taxes.
True. And I think, and maybe I'm thinking incorrectly. You'll tell me. I think that there's probably a window where you're going to operate at a loss for a minute or two.
Yes and no. It depends on the business, really, and that's really what I want people to know ahead of time. So in the book and also in the supplemental resources that come with the book that you can download on my website, I provide a little very simple calculation of how you can find out what your business could look like. And some businesses, like online businesses, if you think about it, don't have to have a loss right away. You can do a lot of the things yourself. You can do your social media. You can do your copywriting, potentially, and try things out and build it slowly. But it's really, it really doesn't have to be at a loss, right? But there are other businesses that have a physical storefront, for example, a store, a restaurant, a product-based business where you need to invest in producing the actual product, materials maybe that product is made of. That's a different conversation, but still, you can estimate what that initial investment could look like and plan, how do I finance it? Where do I find the money? Do I need an investor? Do I need just a partner? Do I need just a loan? Or what will it look like? And that process, that step, is actually empowering for someone who's looking to start a business.
Sure. That makes sense. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. So what do you think are one of the biggest obstacles that a person might run into that they're not going to expect when opening their own business?
A client of mine, one of my top clients, once said, probably 5 or 6 years ago, he said, Tatiana, accountants don't really start businesses. Visionaries do. And so what he meant was that in order to start a business, you can't just look at the numbers. And I agree with him partially, because the majority of businesses that get started with a vision. Someone has this idea. How can I make money? Maybe they have a skill, but they have an idea of how can I make money, run my own schedule, run my own life. And then they would typically, let's say, start or just start and go with it. And oftentimes what I see, and I've been there myself as a business owner, we run into this unintended consequence of this dream where you end up chasing projects, living from payment to payment, working more than you would if you were working for somebody else. And so I think that the root of that is actually in the fact that entrepreneurship is a whole brain approach. It needs a vision, because that's what drives the business. It drives the growth and development. But it also needs the left brain approach, where it's logical, linear numbers. And many entrepreneurs really struggle with that component, which is what my mission is to make easier for them. And so what the real obstacle or issue that I see often entrepreneurs run into is when they first of all think that they can fake it till you make it. When it comes to numbers and money and taxes.
Not when it comes to numbers, money, and taxes.
When it comes to numbers. So they think they can fake it till you make it because everybody else has got it, or it's going to happen on its own, or the accountant will take care of it. But my experience has been, and that's where I disagree with my clients, that the most powerful small businesses, and they don't have to be celebrity businesses, they don't have to be well-known, but still be making a very, very good living and money and whatever, are those who have said, okay, I'm uncomfortable dealing with the financial side of things, but I know that it's the most critical part, and so I'll learn it. I'll learn enough to create a routine for myself, and then make my decisions based on numbers, understand what my obligations are, and make sure that I never run out of money.
Right. That would make sense. We're up against a break. Let's take a break and we'll be right back. How about that?
That sounds great.
Okay, you're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. Our guest this hour is Tatiana Tsoir. We will be right back.
Money Talk with Melanie. Money Talk with Melanie. Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are on with Tatiana Tsoir. She is a small business whisperer, and we're talking to her about ways that we can start our own business without fear and being bold about it, and just getting some tips about ways that we can start our own business. Just some tips and good advice and to start out our 2022 boldly, and just ways that we can be smart about it without messing up and without making undue mistakes. Taking her advice, really. I like the fact that part of the title of her book is to start smart. And part of it, I think, one of the things about starting anything new is the being smart about it. You know, just knowing exactly what to do, and you're going to make some mistakes, even when you start something new. That's a given. You have to forgive yourself for that. But I think a lot of times the stuff that we fear is not going to happen. You fear something, and you go ahead and do it anyway, and you get to the other side of it, and you're like, see, you were afraid of all that, and nothing bad even happened.
Absolutely.
Or something bad happened and you survived, and it wasn't even that bad. It wasn't even that terrible. It was not nearly as terrible as you thought it was going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, Melanie, I think that it's, I believe in the fact that it doesn't have to be just survive. It could be thrive from the get-go. I think that because old businesses start with a vision, because old businesses have to have that spark, which many accountants lack, I want to say, but typically because of that, you have an obligation to make it, and you have an obligation to do it smart so that you can make it.
You do. You do have an obligation to do that. Now, do you think that many people who start businesses feel that they have to have the mind of an accountant, and perhaps that's why they don't bother to start? Like, I have to have the mind of an accountant. I have to be really good at math, so I can't start my own business.
But it's interesting, but accountants aren't necessarily great at math. Some basic algebra, maybe, but it's rare that you need high-level math to be an accountant. But in terms of mindset, I think that you absolutely don't want to be an accountant mindset, because we as accountants, and that's the reason my client said that accountants don't start businesses, right? The reason he said that was because, and I agree with him in a way that for traditional accountants that's the case. We run the numbers on the back of the napkin, we see that it doesn't work, or we don't get excited about it, and that's it. And we set it aside and forget about it and never really think about it again. So I think that the most transformational small businesses and large businesses in the world have started with a vision, an idea, and actually lack of an accountant mindset. That client that I've mentioned actually was a poetry major in college, has had a dream, was far away from numbers as anyone who's creative, but actually realized that in order to really scale his business and grow his business and make an impact with his business's product in the world, he needed to understand and have his own routine. So you don't need to know how to prepare tax returns. You don't need to know how to do the books. There are people out there for that. What you do need to know is, how do you ensure that you don't run out of money regularly? How do you plan for the future? How do you control your expenses and also generate as much income as you can and want to in your business?
Okay, and those are different questions. And you can get someone to tell you how to do that.
Absolutely, but it's ultimately up to you. And the reason I say that is because you can hire a CFO, you can hire an accountant. However, none of those people will ever care about your business and your vision as much as you do. And so understanding what information you need from them to make decisions is critical, and that's really what my message is to those who are starting businesses.
Is to understand what information you need, not necessarily doing it yourself.
Correct. So you don't have to do your own bookkeeping, but you need to understand how to look at a profit and loss statement. What do the numbers mean, and how can you change them? How can you plan for them for the next 3 months? Because I'll give you an example. So let's say with the majority of my clients, we develop 3 to 6 to 12 months cash inflow and outflow projection. We estimate how much money we can generate coming in every month, and what are the fixed expenses we have to pay, and what are the expenses we would like to have, maybe hire an assistant or an additional staff member, or maybe just pay a copywriter. And so we plan those line by line, and it's kind of a little bit of a painful process for 5 seconds. But once you get the gist of it and you start planning month to month in the future, what it allows you to do is it allows you to see, let's say 3 months from now, I'm showing that you will have a negative cash in your bank. You have 3 months to do something about it. Maybe run a promotion. Maybe give 2% discount to your customers to pay you sooner. Whatever it is that you can do you have the power because you know what's coming. And so that's really what it's all about. You have the power to make those decisions. You don't need to do the bookkeeping. You don't need to do the taxes. But understanding, let's say that in March, a tax payment is coming up, you need to budget for that. You need to put it on the sheet and make sure that you have enough cash to cover that.
Right. And so, and people, I think that's a different mindset because people tend to think, particularly in the area of budgeting, always on the cutting side and not on the revenue building side.
That's right. I totally agree with you. But I think that there's two sides of that revenue focus. There is the extreme of, and I've had experience with clients who've been there in the past, there is this extreme of only focusing on the top line. That's also very dangerous. So only growing the top line at all costs, that's not a smart way to run a business. The smart way is to find ways to create maybe an additional stream of income. Maybe it's a recurring membership or a recurring flow of income so that you can count on something every month or every year. I mean, think about accounting. Accounting is a more predictable business in terms of taxes. You get your tax season, you get your monthly bookkeeping, whatever services that you provide. But then you get a project from time to time, let's say, to do a special project for a client. And so that's a one-time revenue. And I think that it's really healthy to think as a business owner, how can you create both and a good blend of both so that you don't always chase projects and you have some fallback if, let's say, a COVID happens.
Right, in case there's a global pandemic.
Yep. That's right.
That's very true. Now, what would you say in building a business is the most important lesson you've learned? If you had one lesson that has impacted you most, what would you say was the most important one?
I think that my most important lesson that I've learned several years ago was that you can never stop learning. You can never stop growing as an individual. And about 3 or 4 years ago, I was in a position where I was working a lot, especially during tax season, but also off season. But my income was growing in small proportions. And I realized, there were a lot of coaches. There's still a lot of coaches out there. And I thought, what could a coach possibly teach someone like me, right? It's a huge ego, which is very typical for accountants, but but it's the truth. And so I came across this training, actually 2 trainings for accountants. And one was that allowed me to actually work less and take more time off. And I realized how much I was missing that. So since then, I've been investing in different programs, whether it's coaching or just a course, to really learn more and read more. And so for me, that lesson was I tripled my revenue in 2 years. I stopped working weekends. I work 2-3 days a week off season. And for me, that has been the transformation of my life. And so I know that, coaching kind of has this a little bit of a, not negative, but sort of funky feeling around it. But because there's so many coaches and different kinds, but actually I believe that the right coach can really not only transform your business, transform your life, but also get you to where you want to be a lot faster than you could on your own.
Oh, I appreciate that. That is really, really good advice. You had no idea what you didn't know.
That's right. And honestly, I knew that I could, it was a big investment for me. I could barely afford it. I charged it on a credit card at the time, but I knew that I had to make it work.
That's excellent. I'm sorry to cut you off. Thank you so much for being on the show. That is great advice. Tatiana Tsoir, thank you so much for being on Money Talk with Melanie this evening. You have a wonderful evening. I hope you'll come back.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yep, you will be right back.
Money Talk with Melanie on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back. I just want to thank everyone for listening to Money Talk with Melanie this evening. I want to thank my guests, Mike Fitzpatrick, at NCX for being my first hour guest, and Tatiana Tsoir. She was fantastic. Actually, both my guests were really fantastic this evening. I want to thank both of you for being my guests. Make sure that you listen to the podcast version of the show, which will be posted on all of my social media in the next day or two. At Money Talk Mel on Twitter, at Money Talk with Melanie on Facebook, on Instagram, Melanie T. Collette, on LinkedIn at Melanie T. Collette. I think that's all my social media. That's it. That's enough. I think I'm going to be on Newsmax at 3:30 on Monday, and I think I'm going to be on there sometime this weekend. I'm going to be on somebody's radio on Wednesday at 10:30. I'm going to post it on social media. If you follow me on social media, I'm going to post whose radio station that is. I just booked that today, and I forget who it is. My booker just emails me and is like, can you be on the radio and talk about this? Sure. Yeah, I'm free. I'll be on the radio. Can you be on the TV and talk about this? Yep, absolutely. I'll do that. So, but if you follow me on social media, I'll always post it. Say if you want to see me, that's where I'll be. And I appreciate your eyes and ears wanting to listen and or watch me talk about stuff. But it seriously, in all seriousness, please stay safe out here. The variants are lurking. Suppose this I don't know, one that begins with an O is supposed to be not as bad. But you know, COVID's serious. Keep you and your family safe, please. Remember the reason for the season. Enjoy your family this Christmas. Please stay very, very safe. Have a very Merry Christmas and stay safe. Appreciate all of you. Thanks.